Sanity for us to be here after 1 o'clock in the morning while these good people vote on legislation that impacts our state in such a great way. I'm David Parker, chairman of the North Carolina Democratic Party, and I grew up in this town. And when I was a little boy, I'd come down here and I was told that this was the seat of democracy. This is where the people's house was. This is where we could rest assured that we were all represented. And yet I come down here this evening on this extremely cold night of this young year and find that pure chicanery has been practiced against the people of this great state. Why the Republicans would at approximately 1:00 or 1:15 in the morning single out teachers for discrimination is just an insult to the education system of this entire state. It violates the Constitution. And I must tell you that it is the height of hypocrisy to start the session off at midnight with a prayer for the health of members and then turn around and take advantage of the fact that there are members that are infirm tonight. It is hypocrisy, it is cruelty, it is using the name of the Lord to blaspheme what this institution stands for, and it is something that the people of this state simply should not tolerate. It's my privilege tonight to turn this microphone over to Representative Rick Glazier, who spoke eloquently this evening, and ask him to make some remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members who are here, also the members of the press who've stayed through a very long day and into the next day. And so we came here today to vote on an issue of incredible importance, the Racial Justice Act. And the majority, seeing it failed to have the votes to do what it came here to do on that act and to repeal that act, spent the better part of the day trying to find a way around that. And we spent hours and 4 recesses, more recesses than any elementary school has during the course of the day, doing just about nothing at about the rate of $55,000 for the day. To produce the mountainous product this evening of eliminating the capacity of teachers to advocate for their profession and for the children they serve in this state. I think that this session was a sham and a shame, and I think it was of no value to the citizens of the state, continues a path of demoralizing professionals in public education, harms the ability that we want in this state to provide a global education for our children, and in the end really does little but seriously harm the institutional integrity of the House of Representatives and the confidence of the people in their government. I think on every score imaginable, on every accountable measure imaginable, the leadership, the Republican leadership of the House of Representatives failed the people of the state of North Carolina this evening.
Thank you, Rick. I call on Senator Nesbitt to say a few words, please, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, and welcome back to Raleigh. This is just about the most incredible time that I've seen down here. I've been here forever. I've never seen anything like this. I've not. Maybe you all can remember sometime that I was delirious and missed it, or I'm sure if you can, you'll remind me. What we just did was take up 4 issues that were so contentious that it resulted in a veto. The people of this state care about these issues. We're lucky that we got out here and they just did one. They had the ability to take up voter ID, that bill, the environmental bills having to do with fracking, having to do with the offshore compacts, etc. And they did all of this with absolutely no notice to the people of this state. And I told them on the Senate side, and Josh Stein did a good job of pointing out to them, that the Senate was when you assist them in doing this kind of action, the fact that you didn't take the bill up doesn't get you off the hook. You're part and parcel of what just happened up there. And I keep listening to them. I listened to them in the Senate. I listened to to Representative Tillis and his remarks to the press. They've forgotten there's 9.5+ million people in this state. How many times have you all reminded me and everybody else down here in leadership about notices? Notice of a meeting. I mean, we've had absolute wars down here over holding a meeting with the door closed. They just, on 5 minutes' notice, took up 4 of the most important bills of this session, and thank goodness they only got one of them out of there. And thank goodness they have built such a record on that one, it will not stand. It will not stand. The open mic gate will take care of that. They went into a caucus and announced what they intended to do to the teachers and why. And I told them on our side, you know, the people were about to forget, and we were losing a little bit on that argument about what you did to the public schools. Just go ahead and backhand the teachers tonight and remind everybody of what you did. And the teachers are getting this because they had the audacity to stand up for cuts, against cuts to the public schools. That's all they've done. It wasn't about cuts to their benefits or cuts to their salaries. They've taken those. It was about what they were doing by cutting personnel in the schools. It's totally outrageous. The people will not stand for it. If they didn't get a message in Wake County the other day, they're going to get one when we get to the next election. The people of this state have had it with them, and Public Policy Polling wrote a good article the other day, and it says every time they come to town, they go down in the polls. They've gone from 11 points up last November to 7 points down by the time we got out of here in June. I don't know where they are now, but they aren't going to be where they are tomorrow when the people of this state find out what they've done today.
Is there any other members that have comments? Take questions if you're on. Hearing none, thank heavens we're adjourned.
Suggested that the public should have known that this was on the calendar. They've been on the calendar all session. He disputed the idea that any of them would even show up here tonight anyway.
That is ridiculous. We're here, as I said in my remarks on the floor, we're here today to deal with the Racial Justice Act. There was not a word to any of us in the public, to any of the 9 million people of North Carolina, that we were here to look at the voter ID bill, to look at the fracking bill, or to look at the NCAA dues checkoff bill. We had no notification of that whatsoever till we heard about the games coming up later in the day. And as Speaker Hackney said earlier, he had an agreement with the Majority Leader Stam, that if we encourage the governor to move forward with the Representative Wallen's appointment, that would be it. There would be nothing besides the Racial Justice Act. That was the agreement that the Majority Leader made with Representative Hackney, the Minority Leader, and that agreement was broken. So there was an agreement broken, but over and beyond that, it is absurd to say that any of us standing back here as members or any of the public could have thought that these other veto overrides would be coming forward today, or in this case, this morning at 1 a.m.
We also would be talking about this bill if 2 Democrats didn't side with the Republicans. What do you have to say to those Democrats who voted to override?
Well, before we get to that, we need to make sure we get the record straight about what we just did and saw happen to the people of North Carolina, because if this wasn't a fraud on the people of North Carolina to say, first of all, we were coming down here to vote on one bill for 1 day. Let's make sure the record is correct that we're down here for 2 days and we're costing the people of North Carolina for 2 days worth of operations of this legislature. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it's a fraud to tell the people we're going to come down here, talk about one bill, hide the fact that you're going to do the other bills. The press did not know. You did not know that we were going to talk about the other bills. You have a critical role to play as well. So not just the citizens of North Carolina were denied, you were denied the ability or the right to go out and ask questions about why and how this was going to be done, who was going to be involved, and why it was going to happen, instead of waiting until we could have full members be here on the 16th of February. So no one had proper notice. it is a fraud, you should be just as incensed as we are.
Why couldn't the caucus hold together?
And I'll let anyone else get in response to that, but I think the caucus has held together. That's one of the reasons you see us here now. The caucus has held together. When we talk about one issue and say we don't want to talk about the other issues that could not be overcome, where they could not override the governor's veto, which is why they didn't even dare to bring them up, then I think you're really looking at an exception. And again, it just enforces the argument that they could have waited until the 16th of February. They only had a chance at doing the one thing they did. If they could have done more, they would have done more, believe it.
Why do y'all think they did not wait till February 16th? Some people like to address that.
Well, I mean, obviously you'll have to ask them.
Well, but they're
But-
only going to say what they want publicly said. You folks may have better. You're more willing to say what you think on that score anyway. So.
Certainly seemed that way on the floor of the House this evening, didn't it? I think, and this is my view, as I suggested, they came with a mission to repeal the Racial Justice Act. They failed to have those votes. As Representative Hall said, our caucus stayed very much together. And I think they spent the better part of a day doing absolutely nothing of value to the people of the state, and I think felt that they had to come away with something for the action of bringing everyone back here, and that something is what you saw at 1:05 or 1:15 this morning. We disagree fundamentally on the value of that action and the harm it has inflicted, but my view, personal view, is that bill was a target from the beginning, and if the record wasn't clear as a result of the comments made in the open mic scenario that Senator Nesbitt talked about, it certainly was made clear this evening when it's the only bill they chose to pursue without notice on the floor of the House in the manner that it was done, in the darkness of night, and with no transparency and no notice to anybody, including the teachers and students and parents of the state of North Carolina. You draw your own conclusions. My conclusion is it was vindictive, it was punitive, it was deliberate, it was willful, and in my view, it's also malicious and harmful to the people of the state.
To the lawmakers, do you anticipate any punishment for the Democrats who broke from the caucus again and are weakening y'all's ability to have power as a minority party?
The punishment is having to stay here at night at this late hour. We're all being punished, and the children of the state are being punished. What happens as far as party discipline is concerned is secondary to that fact. I think there was a question over here.
One of the legislative leaders, how does this poison the legislative debate and the legislative procedures for 2012 now? I mean, first of all, do you think it does poison it because of the actions of today?
It can't help but harm relations for the rest of this session. It can't. When people make agreements and break them within a matter of hours after making the agreements, I mean, all of a sudden trust is gone almost immediately as a result. This has been a sad day, and I want to add one other thing that I guess I may be the only one over there keeping count. But today we had our 34th and 35th question called. 34 and 35. In the 4 years under Joe Hackney, the question was called a total of 7 times. And yes, look it up. Now we just had today, number 34 and 35. Their attitude is, we got the votes, we're going to move it. And they don't try moving legislation unless they've counted their votes and they're ready to go. But this is I think that the fundamental breach, when they make an agreement and then violate it immediately, it reflects so negatively on the leadership of this House that I'm not sure where you go to begin rebuilding relations.
add something to that. I think the challenge for Democrats is really to get the focus back on the real problems that people are having. I think it's incredulous that we're down here these 2 days spending time on these issues when we have people who don't have food to eat, who have lost their jobs, who've lost their homes. We have 50,000 children who don't have child care subsidy. We have a shrinking middle class, a disappearing middle class, and we're not talking about the issues that the people of North Carolina need for us to talk about. That's going to be a challenge for Democrats when we come back in 2012. How do we get that focus back on the real problems?
Forgive me if somebody asked this when I was out on a call, but Speaker Tiller said tonight that basically everybody should have known that this was going to happen because there had been a discussion that this was always going to be on the agenda and there should be a learning experience for the words that you used. How do you respond to that?
The response is we came in yesterday to deal with the Racial Justice Act. That's what we were called in to deal with. That's what we were prepared to deal with. That's what the governor's message was about. And that is what the public expected us to deal with. That's the bottom line. And we believe that the actions that were taken after that point were unconstitutional. And everyone in this group, we all put our hands on the Bible and swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of North Carolina and of the United States. And we would argue that what they did with process tonight was unconstitutional. And that's the bottom line. And I don't think anybody in this room is naive. And none of us expected that to happen.
Let me just add a piece to that. It's hard for you all to try to cover us on the Senate side. There's never any action over there where if you vote short. But we raise a lot of hell over there, and it's really kind of entertaining. I made a point of order that that the adjournment resolution was an unconstitutional document. We came down here under a constitutional provision that provides for the override of a veto that says nothing else can be considered in that session. This wasn't something that somebody overlooked. The Constitution says nothing else will be considered. His ruling was that I was correct. However, it wasn't ripe until something else came before us. So you may want to talk to him, and he's got lawyers that advise him. That in fact, if anything else did come before this session, whether it's through some subterfuge like they used or whatever, it would be unconstitutional. And surely to goodness, I've got to go read some more or get my lawyers to. Surely to goodness, when we're getting ready to have a session in the state of North Carolina and take up matters like this, you got to give somebody notice. You, for instance, y'all used to fuss at me. There's a reason you give notice to the press and the public. It's so people can know what's going on down here. They certainly had no reason to worry about what we were going to do, and I told them down there, I've always heard the legislatures in town lock up your women and children. And now I know why that's been said all these years.
Well, could you talk a little bit more about Lieutenant Governor Dalton's ruling? I mean, my stores with diplomatic questions are gone, so I'm going with the undiplomatic. Wasn't his ruling a bit of a cop-out? I mean, his ruling allowed this session to happen, did it not?
Well, I think Walter made the ruling he thought he had to make. He said that, and his basis is, we're all dealing with something new because nobody's ever tried this trick before. And his point was that the Constitution says no other matter will be considered. Well, we know that an adjournment resolution can be considered because you got to adjourn, and we've done that in the past. But he said the problem is when other matters are considered, and to simply say you're quitting and starting through the adjournment resolution does not excuse what you're supposed to do under the Constitution, which is consider nothing but that.
Deciding in the House, they could have done anything.
That's right. Or if we'd have had to act on it in the Senate, he would have ruled it unconstitutional and out of order. Now, they might have tried to, and I don't believe they'd have tried to overrule him. To be honest with you, I don't think there was any stomach for what was going on down here in the Senate leadership.
You said you were told that you would be going home and that you weren't going to take anything up.
Yes. And we were told that no bills were coming to us. We were told that all day long. We're not going to do that.
Who told you?
Apodaca, Berger, for the Senate leadership, yeah.
Just for a moment,
I'm Winky Wilkins, and before I did this, I was a news guy for 30 years. So, Laura, if I may, I'm going to turn the tables on you and ask you, what did you anticipate today? I'm not talking about yesterday. What did you anticipate today?
I'm just not going to comment.
Okay.
I'm deeply cynical, so.
Okay. But we're not running around with Ouija boards either, and certainly I did not anticipate this until the rumors were flying so fast that there had to be something to them. Thank you for asking the question, though.
And speaking of thank yous, thank you all for this evening. The hour is late, and unless somebody has a stroke of brilliance, we stand adjourned.